Couple of us, okay. So I don't do PowerPoint. Everything's going to be fingers and keyboard. We're going to open up PowerShell. We're going to open up ISE. We're going to open up Visual Studio Code. And I'm going to walk through stuff and demo stuff. If you've got questions, bring them. I actually work with the security group, with the product team. So I get hands-on, very, very deep level with the program, PowerShell group and computer debugging period. So if you've got a question, if I go over something, if I go too fast, don't hesitate. Don't worry about interrupting. Just jump right in there and stop me where I'm at and go, hey, Theo, but what about this? Or how's this work? Or whatever, right? Don't be shy. To go back a little bit, no matter what you're doing today, as you heard, I'm prior military. The military, I was EOD. If anybody doesn't know what that is, that's Explosives Ordnance Disposal. I was a bomb tech. I was not an IT guy. A lot of electronics in my background, no IT. I learned how to program and develop on my spare time, sitting around on the tarmac waiting for helos to take off and whatever else. I've never seen a ship the whole day of my life while I was in the Navy, believe it or not. Never was attached to a boat. I was always boots in the field, so I was attached to a Marine group somewhere looking for IEDs and stopping stuff from blowing up and blowing up stuff. So it doesn't matter what you do today or what career path you think you're on, you can always change that. My best friend and mentor upstairs, which is one of our deep product group developers, he's a history major. He used to teach jazz to pay his bills for jazz guitar to pay his bills. So again, it doesn't matter what you do today, you can get into whatever you want to. You got to set your mind to. With that, PowerShell is a great entry into this. Because with PowerShell, you can do anything that you can do on a system. If you can click on it, I can do it in PowerShell. There's things that you can't click on that I can do in PowerShell. Today in Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, doesn't matter where you're at, who you're utilizing, rack space, it doesn't matter. There's things that you can't even do in those interfaces if you don't know PowerShell. The buttons don't exist. So same thing is on your operating system. Today, if you're an IT administrator, which is kind of the name of this group, right? If you're not doing PowerShell, you're doing it wrong. It can absolutely automate your life. It can help you get tasks done. You can have things that are happening while you're off getting coffee. For instance, when I first got to Microsoft, I came on as an exchange engineer. I played a bunch of different roles here. I was one of the guys that answered the phone. Server's in a bad state, it's tipping over, CPU's high, memory's exhausted, whatever it may be, right? And I was the guy that helped you get that thing back on its feet. In that, I had a group that I worked with, which is our EE group. They're an escalation level group, and they read memory dumps and look at code. And when we couldn't solve the problems, we went to them to say, hey, we've got this problem, please help us. Well, I didn't like help. I don't like somebody having to do something for me. So I set out on the path to become one of those guys. That was my next role here at Microsoft. I became an EE. So memory dumps, CPU level, looking at registers, looking at ones and zeros. I call it the truth. It's eye level with the CPU. It doesn't get it. If it's there, it's either a 1 or a 0. Which is it, right? There's no thinking that. There's no end answer. When somebody says, well, it works this way, I'm looking at the CPU going, no, it doesn't. It works this way. So it is the end-all, be-all answer. And the reason I say that is when I was on that team, one of my jobs for that team was keeping our code taken care of. We had 3 or 4 servers that were sitting there, and we had Exchange code that came on it that we were constantly having to change and make updates to and redeploy it. And every morning when I came in Monday morning, one of my tasks was, as the new guy to the team, was to get on all those servers, go through the event logs, go through the IS logs, make sure things were working right, make sure I didn't have any errors and all that. When I got to the office Monday morning at 8, 9 o'clock, my next 4 to 5 hours was that. I got tired of that real quickly. I wanted something to do that for me. One of the guys came to me and said, hey, Theo, you should check out PowerShell. And I was like, I don't want to hear about PowerShell. I'm a C# developer. I write a real language, right? Negative, Batman. It doesn't work that way. PowerShell is absolutely awesome because it sits on top of .NET. It'll do everything I can do in C#, and most of the time I can do it quicker, easier, and faster with PowerShell than I can to open up Visual Studio and start writing C# code. It abstracts all the hard work that has to go into C# to be able to do what you want to do. And we've got thousands of commandlets out there. I'm going to show you those and how to find them. And do not sit and think that you have to remember all these commandlets, because remembering commandlets, that's for somebody else. That's not what I do. I want to be able to find these things easily. So I'm going to teach you how to do that this evening if you haven't done it. Who's worked with PowerShell? Okay, a little bit, not a whole lot. Out of the ones that raised your hand, who's an expert in PowerShell? Fair enough. You got one on challenge there. It is just an amazing tool. And as with anything else, it has a scripting kind of...
To be an expert in PowerShell, you have to be bald.
It's Let your brain breathe. So PowerShell, when you first look at it, it can be just like any other programming language. Because at the end of the day, don't take it as it's not a programming language. It is a programming language. The difference between a programming language and a scripting language is just simply this. A programming language must be compiled. A scripting language runs on the fly. But at the end of the day, we're going to talk about for loops, we're going to talk about switching statements, we're going to talk about how PowerShell commandlets come together, these pipelines and all this stuff, which are all programmer terms. So it doesn't matter, you can call it scripts all you want. I can run around you in scripts all day long, and you can use your C# and get halfway through what I got done in 10 minutes will take you hours. Okay? So, with that, we need a little bit of fundamentals to go into it. So let me go back to my story real quick. Those servers, again, 4 or 5 hours of my Monday morning was taken up looking at those servers. So I got into PowerShell, listened to my colleagues' advice, and I started digging into PowerShell to see what it was all about. About 3 weeks later, it took me a little bit of work. I had to get it all figured out, play with it. It takes time to flesh it out, and I'm telling you that because you're going to experience the same struggle. With everything, the only way to learn this is fingers in the keyboard. Okay? Do it. Go out, look at some scripts, look at what other people are doing, figure it out, sit down, bang your head against it. Does this work? No. What does this do? Don't be scared to type on that keyboard. And I'm going to show you some tricks that will keep you from messing anything up. I call it my bacon saver techniques. So we'll take a look at those too. But now I had this 4 or 5 hour task. I spent 3 weeks to write some scripts. Now on Monday mornings I come in, I walk over to my computer, I hit a button, I go get coffee. I come back to my desk 10 minutes later and there's an HTML report sitting on my desk that says, here's what all your servers look like. 4 to 5 hours just became free to me again for me to go figure out something else, to do bigger and better things, and I wasn't doing these remedial tasks any longer. So the automation of PowerShell is really where the power of PowerShell comes in. To take these scripts, to do scheduled tasks, to make all this stuff kind of play around and work with each other, to get all these daily things that you're doing done for you. Or, not just automation kind of tasks that you've got to do, but maybe you get these one-ups, like you need to go delete a user from Active Directory, or you need to remove somebody's mailbox in Exchange, or you need to stand up a SQL database, or you need to stand up an Azure VM, or deploy an app service, or whatever. All these things can all be done through PowerShell. Now, I'm not going to talk about product-specific done. This is a PowerShell talk. So we're going to focus on the language specifics. We're going to talk about architecture in PowerShell. We're going to talk about how things work. And we're going to go into that kind of method. Because if you learn those fundamentals, when it comes to the products that it goes along with, everything else just kind of comes into play. You have to know these fundamentals to be able to use PowerShell. So with that, let's dig right in. First thing that we're going to talk about is how a PowerShell commandlet is put together. So a PowerShell commandlet has what I like to call an anatomy. There's things that go along with the PowerShell commandlet that gives it its power. And this is where you truly have to start with PowerShell. I'm going to use a very simple commandlet here called get-process. Now as you can see, get-process is pretty straight simple. It has 2 pieces along with it. The first part of it is what we call our verb. What's this thing going to do? It's going to get something. It's going to add something. It's going to set something. It's got its verb. The second part is what we call the noun. The noun is what it's going to do it to. In this case, what's this one do? Anybody guess? Say again? Read it. It's that simple. So I always love to ask that question because I get those kind of answers. Here's our task manager. It doesn't. No, it actually gets the process. It does exactly what it's going to say. If we hit our button here, it goes out on my machine, and it gets all the processes on my machine and gives me various pieces of information about those processes. So this is just one of the thousands of commandlets that are available in PowerShell, but let's focus on the anatomy. Again, that verb noun. Every commandlet is composed this way. It always has its verb, it always has its noun. Now with that, we have these things that go along with these that I like to call superpowers. And these superpowers are our parameters that go along with it. So now I can say get-process, I can give it a parameter. In this case, I'm going to get the name parameter. And now I can start adding things in here to get more specific. Maybe I don't want all the processes. Maybe I just want to see, say, zoom in. So now I can start adding parameters to give my commandlets powers. Now there's two different types of parameters that go with the PowerShell commandlet. There's a value type parameter. It takes a value. This is one of those. The name parameter takes a string value. We'll talk about what a string and all those are here in a second, but it takes a value that goes along with it. The secondary thing was we have switch parameters. Question?
So was PowerShell kind of developed for voice recognition?
So there's some stuff coming along with that I won't get into this evening, but there is some voice recognition that you can add on top of to get
Well, no,
PowerShell
I mean when you say get process, that's easy for voice recognition. If I say, you know, bracket.
So it wasn't specifically developed for that, right? It was developed for
you can write it, but you can't speak it.
Right. Well, this was developed for human readability. So it makes it really easy to read. You know exactly what I'm doing when I run a command. I'm getting the process name to zoom it, right? But however, with that, we've got lots of Cortana stuff.
But it's easy to transition to voice.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's modules already on Cortana built out there. I don't know any of the other voice engines that's jumping on that bandwagon right now, but definitely our own. We've got modules out there that will let you do some voice recognition stuff. All right. So, how do you discover these parameters? I'm going to teach you my favorite two commands. My favorite two commands are ones that I'm going to ask you over and over this evening because I need to get them in your head. These are the ways that you find PowerShell commands and you work with PowerShell and you understand the whole structure that goes with every command. The first command that I want to do when I'm looking for a command is I want to do a get dash, guess what? Command. It's that simple. Again, if you can think it, say it in your head, and usually logically somewhere through there's a PowerShell commandlet that will go along with this. Get command is my favorite one, and there's different ways to use it. I'm going to show you the way I use it. I use it with what we call the wildcard setup because it makes it really easy. If I'm looking, anytime that we talk about log files or text files or IS files or whatever it is, everybody works with some kind of .log or something today, right? Well, when I work with those, think in PowerShell, those are content. Anytime I'm trying to get content into PowerShell, I want a content command. Well, for me to find all the content commands out there, I just want to say, show me anything with the word content and anything else in it. When I run this, it's going to give me, here's all the commands, Theo, that have the word content in it. So now I'm able to go find these commands. I don't have to try to remember, get content or clear content or add content. I'll just come here and let that thing remember it for me. Again, if you just run that command like we ran it a second ago, let me clear my screen, let me do a get dash command here. If I just run this, it's going to find every command that's available on the machine. You can see what's happening here, right? There's a lot of commands, a lot of commands. I'll show you a way to find out how many you've got if I can get it to stop here. Here in a little bit. So get command, when you run get command, you want to run it with whatever keywords you're looking for. Now you can string these along too. Let's say we're looking for a command that is, let's say it's an Azure command, and it deals with networking, and maybe it also deals with a config file. So now I've strung 3 different words in there, all separated by a wildcard, that will let me go find specifically those commands that have those 3 words. Now it is order specific, so it's looking for, hey, what do you have in Azure? What is networking, and what does config files? And it just found me all these Azure config files. Now, that greatly reduced my list from get-azure or get-command. Right now, I've got this small subset of commands I can go dig through and go, oh, I can add a new network, or I can remove some kind of virtual network, or whatever, but it's an easy way for you to find your commands. That's one use for get-command. Do not sit down and try to memorize PowerShell commands. It's futile. They change. Depending on what products that you have, there are tons out there, but there's about 3,600 or so that come right out of the box with PowerShell. Now this is a VM that I just built, so I haven't added anything to this one. Don't pay attention to the command I'm using here, but, and I'll talk about that in a second. So mine has 4,944 commands on it right now. That's out of the box. I haven't added anything. I haven't added an Exchange module. I haven't added Active Directory module. I haven't added anything. Out of the box, 4,900 commandments. Okay, so it's very powerful. Lots of functionality built in right out of the box. Okay? So how do we find a command that we're looking for? What if I wanted to find something on processes? What would I type? Don't be shy.
Get process.
Get command process.
What if I wanted to do something else with processes? What commands are out there?
Get commands.
Get command, right? So back to this. So remember, I said I'm going to kind of beat this in, because if I want to do anything with processes, I'm simply going to say get command, show me everything that you have to do with processes. Now I can see that I can stop a process, or wait for a process, or start a process, or get a process. I can do all this stuff, but that's how I discover what I'm working with. So if somebody comes to me and said, hey Theo, I'm trying to look into my application logs. What PowerShell commandlets are out there for event logs? Well, I'm going to say run git-command, and I'm going to say throw in your event. I wouldn't do burnt. It's not going to get you anything back. But I'm going to do event and the word log. When I do that, I automatically get commands that work with event logs. So again, think about it. Think about what you're doing, and logically start putting it into words with git command.
How about get command help?
So there is a help. I'm going to talk about that in a second, but I wouldn't do help. There's another command for that. Taking what I just logically put together for you with our verb and our noun, what would that command be? If I wanted to get help, what would I do?
Get help.
Get help. It's that simple. Which leads us right into the segue of I found my command.
Careful, you might go bold.
Right? I found my command get-event log. How's it work? Well, to figure out the way that it works, I can do two things. I'm going to stick with get command for a second because we need to talk about all these things that go with our commandlet. So if I do a get-command, and I go get, now that I know my commandlet, and I can do this PowerShell parameter called syntax, and it's going to show me what all parameters are available with this command. Now this will look kind of funky to you at first, but I'm going to explain how all this works. So I got my command, and I get all these words and parameters that are wrapped in square brackets and angle brackets and all this stuff, but what's all that noise mean? What that noise means is it says, is this parameter required or is it optional? Because with PowerShell commands, sometimes things are optional. Like I ran get-process with nothing, right? If I tried to do that with a get-event log, notice immediately it says, hey, you're missing some stuff. I need information, right? So if you don't put a parameter in there and a PowerShell command that has a required set of parameters, the first thing it's going to do is yell at you saying, hey, I need a value for this thing. Well, I don't know. What are you talking about here? What's a log name? I don't know yet, but I'll show you how to get to that. So the way that we want to do this is look back at this syntax. Now I'm going to zoom in on this syntax so we can talk about it for a second. Anytime you see square brackets around a parameter name, square brackets means that parameter is optional. Notice in this one though, in here, this parameter is followed by this thing called string. So remember I told you there's two types of parameters in PowerShell, right? One that takes a value, and then one that's the switch. I didn't explain the switch yet. Let's talk about the one that takes a value. Anytime you have a parameter that takes a value, it will always be followed by a set of angle brackets, less than, greater than brackets, that has the type that it's expecting. We'll get to types. In this case, it's a string. Everybody knows what a string is? Just a long set of characters, right? So this one takes a string. But since it doesn't have square brackets around it, what it tells me is I don't have to type -log name, but I do have to give it its value. If it didn't require anything, let's go get another one, get-command. Let's do a get-process. Let's ask for the syntax on that. Now you'll notice here that get-process for this one not only has the square brackets around the dash name, but it also has the square brackets around the string that it's expecting, right? That tells me the whole thing is optional. I don't have to give it anything. I can just run this command. So you're looking for the square brackets. to know whether it's got a required parameter or not. Inside of your angle brackets, that tells you what type of parameter it is. Now, notice also in this one, it's a little different than our other one because where it says string, right after string, it has a couple of square brackets there. Those brackets tell me that it will not accept only one string, but it will accept one or more strings. So anytime you see two square brackets together like that, note that you're getting multiple. You can pass it. In this case, I can say get process. I'll just demonstrate. Makes it easier. I can say get dash process, and I can say go get me zoom it. Now notice here that I didn't put dash name this time, because now I know that dash name has a square brackets around it. It's optional. Okay, so I don't have to actually use the parameter name. I can just say the value that I'm passing to it. I can ask for that one. I can also ask for multiples. So let's go get zoom at 64. So it means that comma separated, it will take more than one string if it has those two square brackets around string. Does that make sense? Question?
Could you wildcard zoom in? Could you just ZO then asterisk?
You absolutely can, with some commands. And there's a way to look at that. We'll talk about that in just a second when we get to get help. But you absolutely can do wildcards on some commands, not all. And it depends on what the type is. We're going to talk about types real quick as well. There's three things to completely understand inside of PowerShell that will make your life in PowerShell easy. How to find commands, how to understand what that command does, and these things called options. We're going to get to those in a second. So, now we know how to look at our syntax, right? We can look at this syntax and go get dash process, and just for fun, the first line of get dash process there, is there any commands in there, any parameters that are required? I've already told you the answer, but looking at it, are there any commands that are required?
No.
Why?
Because they're all in square brackets.
Every single one of them are in square brackets. It's really that simple. Well, what happens if you forget whether square brackets means optional or not? Here's where your fun part comes in. So now I want to know more about get process. This doesn't really give me all the information that I need here to understand get process. Maybe I don't know what it wants when it asks for module, or maybe file version doesn't make sense to me, right? Somebody else put those words in there. They try to be very descriptive with those and the parameters and the commandments, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to understand what it is. Well, this is where that get help really plays into effect here, and I'm going to do a get help on the commandment that I want help for. So get dash process. Now if I do this by default, you'll notice that I got a help screen here, but it's really kind of small. And you haven't maybe seen the big one yet, and I'll show you the difference, but in here, it's got the same kind of syntax that I asked for get command, so this is another place where you can go to see all your syntax and your required, but it's missing what those parameters are. Notice that I get my syntax, I get my description, I get related links, and that's all I get. Because by default, when you do a get help, PowerShell gives you the minimum help file it can give you. Well, I don't know about any of you, but you're here, so I'm going to guess that you have an inquiry in mind and you want to learn. So with that, I want a bigger help file. I don't want this little tiny thing. So there's two ways you can get a big help file. I'll show you the PowerShell way, and then I'll show you the Theo way. You can do a dash full here. And I don't know if you've seen that, but you can tab through. So once you type a letter or two, like in this case, the F, I can hit my tab button, and it will say, hey, here's one that starts with an F. I don't like that one. I can hit tab again, it'll go to the next one. If I pass it and I want to go backwards, I can hit shift tab, and it goes backwards. So tab complete, number one, is your best friend inside of PowerShell. It'll save you tons of typing. I know everybody loves to type. That's what you wake up for in the morning, right? Not so much. I don't either. I don't mind typing, but I want to be more efficient. I want to get more done. Tab completion will help you with that. So a dash full, notice that rolled by several screens. So it's a lot more help. When I look at this help file, notice what I'm doing here. I'm scrolling up, I'm having to get into it. Well, if I was down here, let's say I'm down here at the bottom. See, I've already lost my place. Get dash process. Then I'm going to go get a name. I'm going to go get zoom it. And wait, I want to use file version, but I don't know what that is. Let me scroll back up and find out what that is, right? That's cumbersome. This for me anyway. So the way that I like my help is I don't do the dash full. I do this thing called show window. Show window actually opens it up in another window. Anybody work with one screen all day long? Yeah. I never get a yes to that answer anymore. 10 years ago? Yeah. Today, not so much. this is great because I can take this now and slide it over to my other screen. And I can use this to reference and go down here and find that. Let's see, let's find it. So here's an easy way to search inside of this as well that you don't get in the other one. I can start typing file. Well, it took me immediately to file version info and starts to highlight. There's ways for me to change that, and I'll show you that in a second. But this is a really great way to be able to have your help file, slide it off to the other screen, continue building your command or whatever you're doing, and have this window to help reference and do whatever you're doing in PowerShell. It's fantastic. A couple other things with it that I love is that I can come down here and notice that in the bottom it's got this slider with the percentage. So as I get older and my eyes get worse, I want my help bigger or smaller, right? So I can absolutely do that. And let's see, let's set it at 270. I'm going to close the window, reopen that window. Look at where it's at. It's still at 270. What do you know? We remembered something. I love that because I don't have to go back and set my settings over and over. It remembers what you did inside that window. The other thing that you get with it, oops, didn't mean to close it. The other thing that you get with it is you get this little settings box that lets you choose what you want to see. So if you don't want to see the synopsis, or if you don't want to see the notes, or whatever you don't want to see there, you can uncheck that and it remembers those settings too. If you've got specific search options that you like to keep, some people like to be case sensitive. Right there, you can say match case or match whole word. I don't like those. I like keeping it open because I like to be able to come up here and just simply type a word and it start finding that word for me, right? And it'll find, notice I did FI, it found the FI and specifies, it also found the FI and file. So for me, I like this approach better. But this is your way, just remember, get help, your command drafter, -show window. That'll get you to this command. Now that we're in here, here's where the fun starts, because now we can actually start getting data out of this. We want to learn what that file version info, I guess I should have stayed on that. So if I want to learn what file version does, I come down to that parameter, and now I don't just get that syntax that I got earlier, but now it actually tells me what this file version is. It gives me a little explanation. It indicates, gets the file version or whatever, right? It tells me a little bit more about this. It also gives me something else if in case I forget what those square brackets means. I can go required is false. Well, what's file version have around it up in the syntax? And I can scroll up and look at the syntax, or scroll down and look at the syntax, and now I see that it has square brackets around it. It said required equals false, so square brackets must mean false, right? So it lets me do a little deduction. It helps me in case I forget what those square brackets mean or what they don't. Get command, get help should absolutely be your two most used commands in PowerShell. You should be, if you're doing any kind of PowerShell during the given day, unless you're intimately familiar with the commands that you're working with, these are your friends. They're going to help you, show you, and teach you what's going on inside of that command list. The other part that the full help gives you is it gives you a bunch of examples. Hey, use it like this. Pass it over to this thing called format list. We'll talk about a pipe and a format list, but it gives you examples and even explains what this example does and what it's going to give you. Some of them actually give you the output from it, some of them don't. But these examples are great ways to go, okay, I'm starting to work with PowerShell, what's some of the stuff I can do? Come to the examples, check it out, dig it, and it will show you exactly kind of some of the things you can get into. Okay? There's no better way, again, to learn PowerShell than fingers in the keyboard. But when you don't know what to do with those fingers in the keyboard, that can kind of be futile, right? Looking at these examples gives you things to go, let me go try that. What does that actually give me? And you can play with that. Another way to learn is looking at somebody else's script. I like to look at good scripts. So how do you tell the difference between a good script and a bad script? PowerShell script gallery. Okay? Remember that. Bing it, Google it, whatever your favorite search engine is, PowerShell script gallery. The PowerShell gallery will absolutely has tons, tens of thousands of pre-built in-can scripts that you can get. You can take them and modify them and look at them and play with them. But they're vetted by Microsoft engineers. We have a tool that goes through that runs about 16 different tests on them to make sure that they're good, they're not malicious, number one. We have another 20 or so tests that looks at patterns and practices inside of those scripts to make sure that they're not going to cause performance issues or other things on your box. And then, if they get any flag whatsoever, they get somebody like me that looks at that flag and says, hey, this one didn't pass, Theo, please go manually take a look at this. And somebody like me goes and looks at it and makes sure that it is what it is. And then we go add a new rule to our engine so I don't have to do that next time. So PowerShell Gallery is a great place to go find some scripts, look at them, and learn from them. Cobble stuff together. You may find stuff that works right out of the box. You may just have to modify it a little bit. But use your help file. Get command, get help. Another question?
Microsoft Office help leaves a lot to be desired. I swear 60% of the time I go to get help, I can't follow their instructions successfully. Can I get help out of PowerShell for Microsoft Office?
PowerShell will give you PowerShell help on the command lines.
Okay.
Office,
It's
I'm not an Office
a
guy.
way of saying, hey, Microsoft, get your act together on Office, you know what I mean? It's crazy. I mean,
so Office now has free support, and they have an online chat. If you're not finding what you found on the KB or the MSDN help site, right in the bottom right-hand corner, click chat now. Use it. It'll get somebody on the line. You can go, hey, this doesn't work, or this is wrong, or what the heck, this doesn't even match up, and they'll have somebody ping back to you going, hey, here's what you need to do.
I
Or the
have,
forums is another great way to do
I
it.
have Office 2013, not 16, so, and I don't have Office 365, I mean,
Gotcha.
I think I'm screwed still.
No, there's still help there. Use the forums. Forums is another great place.
You kind of said that PowerShell script galleries is the spot to go. Have you ever not found scripts before there and gone other places like, GitHub has a library?
So PowerShell Gallery is absolutely backed with Git. So everything that you see in Git is on PowerShell Gallery, and there's more on PowerShell Gallery as well. Well, now that we own Git, we're converging both of those, so everything that's on one will be a direct mirror of the other. So you can go to Git, the PowerShell, github.com/PowerShell, and that will get you to the PowerShell documentation and script sites as well.
About the help for the office, you're telling him it's on the bottom right hand, you select it.
Yeah, there's a chat down on the bottom right-hand corner that you can click on to chat with somebody. I think it says
Like in
like
the
chat
Word
now or
office?
something
Okay,
like
alright,
that.
okay.
Yeah, or if you don't mind waiting, the forums is a great place because the moderators will control what gets pushed back to that, but you get not just Microsoft people that can help you, but a lot of times MVPs, partners, and other people will chime in on the thread to kind of help you with problems. So the Microsoft forums are really a great place to go to.
Is there PowerShell for Mac or Linux?
Sorry, say that again?
Or does PowerShell work with Mac or Linux?
So, to answer your question, I'm on a Mac. Now I'm running a VM, however common. Let's do this, just for fun. Here's my Mac. PowerShell. I've got PowerShell built right into my Mac. I don't care what you're running today. PowerShell's out there. Runs on Red Hat, runs on Linux, Ubuntu, Mac OS.
I am on El Capital, but it says you need Mac OS. Are you on Mac OS?
I am. This is Mac OS. This is High Sierra 10.13.
Okay.
I think is what I'm up to now.
Okay.
So, yeah. Tell you quickly. Yeah, 10.13.6.
But IBM's operating system, IBM has an operating system,
PowerShell Core will still run on it. It will run on any Linux kernel out there today, and IBM's backend is a Linux kernel.
Well, IBM has two systems, one Linux-based and one not so Linux-based.
It's still a Linux kernel. Both of those are a Linux kernel. Yeah, and PowerShell 6 doesn't use .NET like real PowerShell does. Now you'll find that if you go to your Mac, you might have certain commands that aren't there, like if PowerShell guys, WMI commandlets. Well, that's Windows Management Instrumentation, right? You're not going to find those commands on your Mac or your Red Hat or your Ubuntu OS.
Some of those support SIM.
Some of them do support SIM, depends on the version and the operating system. But yeah, you can do some SIM commands. But you'll find that there'll be commands that aren't there, but there'll be similar, comparable commands out there. So yeah, you can absolutely run PowerShell wherever you go. All right. Back to where we were. All right. So that is your get help and get command. You should be using them religiously because they will. They'll answer your question. And at the end of the day, if you don't like what you're reading here, at the end of the help files, you'll always find this go to the online version, at least for Microsoft commandlets. Now anybody can create a commandlet, and I'll show you how to do that too by the end of the night. Maybe. We'll see. Time's getting short already. But you can grab this URI here.
Or just do dash online.
Yeah, or just do dash online. And I can plug that in. And that will take me to that online page for Get Process. And it has a bunch of clickable stuff in it that if I want to go look at it, there's all those parameters, the description, the examples, everything that we had is the same thing that was in the online version, so you can have it other way. And sometimes I like the online version just a little better sometimes, depending on what I'm doing. Like if I get a big example like this one, I like to see it kind of in this format rather than the Windows Show Help kind of format. So the online version is there for you as well. All right. Now, let's talk about the second thing you need to do in PowerShell. Anytime that you're playing with PowerShell commandlet, we need to get data. And we need to manipulate that data, or look at that data, or do something with that data, right? Well, how do we manage data inside of PowerShell? Anybody know what a variable is? Shh. Anybody know what a variable is? Don't be shy. What's a variable? Say again?
Placeholder.
That's a good way to describe it. Anybody else? There's all kinds of words to describe a variable. At the end of the day, it's a box. That's all it is. It's a box. It doesn't care what is in it. It's just a box. A variable is a box that holds stuff. It's up to us to put stuff in that box. But it's just a box. So don't let a variable consume you any more than just that. In PowerShell, the way that we define a variable is by this thing called a $sign. Anytime you see a $sign inside of PowerShell, it always refers to a variable. One exception. I'll talk about it too. But always refers to a variable. Almost always. The way that we make a variable, I'm going to make one called num. Doesn't matter. PowerShell is also case agnostic. Let me call that out. So if I say num here, making it a capital N, anytime I want to assign a value into PowerShell, I use an equals operator. Anybody a developer in another language? C#, Java, Node.js? You're going to hate PowerShell at first. Just because, right? Because of all your equals and equal things and all this other stuff that you do in the programming language, PowerShell only uses one operator for assignment, that's equals. Anytime you want to do comparisons and other stuff, we have keywords, and I'll talk about those. But if I want to put a variable, put a value, put some data in this box, then I have to use my equal sign and assign something to it. Now, I can make that simple as the number 5. And when I call out $num now, notice I'm doing lowercase, because remember I said PowerShell's case agnostic. It doesn't care about case, it's insensitive by default. It still finds my box and says, oh, hey, num has a 5 in it. Here it is. And it gives me that piece of data. So now I can use that, pass that somewhere, use it to my advantage. Now you'll see it more like things like this. So let's make $proc, and I'm going to set proc equal to, say, zoom it. And now I can do things by setting that. If I go look at $proc now, it's got zoom in it. It's just a string. I can now say get-process, and I can pass it my $proc, and it will go find me the zoom it process. So again, don't complicate it any more than it is. A variable is nothing more than a box that holds some data. Now that data is very important. That data in PowerShell, everything is an object. Everybody's like, well, what's that mean? An object is a very simple concept if you let it be simple. It can be a very complex conversation as well. Let's think of it really simple. We have an object that we're dealing with. An object can have multiple things inside of it. It can have what we call properties, which is just simply data values. Or it can have actions, which are things that it can do. But an object itself, let's use me as an example. I'm a human, right? A human has arms, legs, sometimes hair, sometimes not. We have things, but this is an object. When I say arms, it either has one or two states. I either have arms or I don't, or maybe he has 2. You might have a number, but that's just data. It's just something that tells me about arms, right? I can also have a method, a function, or an action inside of an object, and that action is things like walks, talks, eats, wakes up, right? These are things that I can do. It's not really tangible data, but it's something that I can make a human go do. Well, objects in PowerShell are exactly the same. We have all these things, and you're going to hear different words. There's several different words out there for both of those things. When we're talking about properties, they can be called properties, attributes, values, fields. You'll hear all those same things. At the end of the day, it just means data associated with the human. Or actions, procedures, functions, methods. You're going to hear them call all of that. At the end of the day, they all mean that this is something that you can call to do something. Now remember, I said everything in PowerShell is an object. Well, how do you see that? The first thing to understand is, how do we look at our thing and figure out what type of object it is and what it has together? Now those properties and methods that I'm talking about, collectively they're called members. So if I wanted to see my members on an object, what do you think the command is? Say it out loud. Look at that. It's intuitive, right? It's simple. So I take that $num, I pass it over through this thing called a pipeline. A pipeline is a very simple concept. Let it be as simple as it is. It's a pipe. I'm taking whatever's on the left and passing it to whatever's on the right through this pipe. That's all it is. It's saying whatever's on the left, go to whatever's on the right. In this case, I'm taking my object, and I'm going to pass it to a get-member. And when I do that, what I get out of here is all kinds of information. The first thing that I get, which is usually one of the most important I care about, is my type. So I can see that number, a 5, is an int, 32 in this case. An int is an integer, right? It just means a number. In this case, it's a 32-bit number. PowerShell is magic under the covers. Sometimes you want it to be, sometimes you don't. I'll do a little exercise here in a minute to kind of demonstrate that. But it does magic under the covers to make it its own type. In this case, it made my 5 an int 32. Why didn't it make it an int 64? Anybody know the difference between 32 and 64? Mainly a size thing, right? So PowerShell said, what did you say? Don't need it. Don't need it. It said, hey, fits in a 32-bit architecture. We just shove it down in that 32-bit. There's ways for me to override that and make it go into something bigger. But PowerShell will kind of do that magic for you, so you don't have to worry about that. But you do need to understand your type for this reason. Number one, understanding the type will help you kind of start to understand all these things that do it. Now, a number is a bad one to use here as an example, so let me make another one. We'll make our zoom in process. I'm going to set it equal to a get-process zoom in. So this will take that output we seen earlier from that get-process zoom in, and it's going to shove it in the box, right? So now if I do $zoom in, or zoom in this case, it gives me that data. I just stored that output from this command into that box. So now I've got that data. Well, again, what is zoom? I don't know what that is. How do I figure that out? Well, I take my zoom, I can pipe it over to my get member, and I can see all the things that it does or has. Now notice here, we've got methods, we've got properties, we've got alias properties, we've got all this stuff that it is. But most importantly, the first thing I need to understand is what is it? Well, up here in our type, it's going to tell me that this is a process. So again, I've just identified my type that I'm working with, and I'll make this more clear why you need to understand types here in a little bit. But I can go in here now, and I can see that it has all these methods. So off as zoom, I can tell it to kill it, or refresh it, or start it. It's a process, right? Maybe I need to restart the process. It's consuming too much memory. It's acting funky. I just want to restart it, right? I've got these methods here that I can call. How do I know it's a method? 2 ways. 1, tells me it's a method. And 2, it has this thing with parentheses after it. Anytime you see parentheses attached to something, that means it's an action. That's the way it's telling you it's an action. Whether it takes something or not, we'll talk about it in a second, but you'll see some of them have stuff inside the parentheses, some of them don't, okay? But now, I get to see what my object has along with it. Well, how do I get to this stuff? There's a thing in PowerShell called dot notation. Dot notation lets me access all the properties off of my object. Let's take a look at that object again. So if I call out zoom here, by default, I got, what, 7 properties there? Yeah, 7 properties there. So I just seen the list. Is that 7 properties? Is this more than 7? More than 7, right? Why ain't it showing me all of them? I want to see them all. I'm gonna requiring mine. I want to understand, right? Turn over the rock. What's under it? Well, by default, whoever wrote this commandment for get process, they said, I'm only going to show you what I feel is important about a process. If you want to see any of the rest of the stuff that was on that list, you have to go ask for it. Well, the way we ask for it is, again, this thing called dot notation. So I can look at the property. Let's say what's not on the list. Working sets on there. Let's say threads. So threads isn't on that list, right? But if I want to see it, I simply say dot threads. And now I can see it just gave me an output of all the threads that were on there. In this case, I've got one. And an easy way to tell how many objects you've got on that, when it hands it to you, you're going to see a space, and then you'll see it start over. So in this case, I've got, zoom in. We'll start with base priority here. Oops, sorry. My Zoom's going crazy here on me. So in this case, you can see I've got base priority. If I scroll down, I've got another base priority. So that's the start of all these outputs, right? So I can see I've got 3 threads here, and it gives me information about that thread. But I can do that for any of my properties. Let's go get our members again. And let's say maybe we want to know when that process was started. So I can do the same thing. I can come down here and say zoom. Instead of threads, I can say start. Now again, I just typed ST. Tab, standard error, tab, standard input, tab, standard output. Oop, there's my start time. Remember, if I pass it, I do what? Shift tab takes me backwards instead of tabbing all the way through again. I love when people do that. I just kind of sit there and giggle for a second, then I tell them how it really works. But start info. Now I can see that my start time for that process was a few minutes ago because I just started it up right before I started talking, right? So there it is, 6:35. I started up zooming. But now you can start to access that data and see this stuff off of that object. So now I'm getting a whole lot more than what just the basic zoom gave me, right? Start time's not in that list, but it's in my property list. So again, properties are data associated with your object. Methods are actions that that object can take. If I want to kill zoom it, I've got 2, so let's do a get dash process. Somebody asked me earlier, can you do wildcards? Well, get dash process does, the way that I figured that out, get dash help, I'm going to get dash process, grab my show window here. If I scroll down to that parameter, name, oh look at that, it even tells me it doesn't accept wildcards, so sometimes documentation's wrong. We are human. This one absolutely accepts wildcards. I'll prove it here real quick. 1 second.
It says the description, they say.
Yeah, it actually does say in the description you can do that, but then it turns around and says accepts wildcards. No. So, if I come in here and say get dash process, zoom start, that should give me both my zoom in and my zoom at 64, which it did, right? So it absolutely accepted my wildcard character. Question?
Do you use the browser much?
Browser.
PowerShell module browser?
No. So I'm really a Visual Studio Code guy. I'm going to show you Visual Studio Code in a second, but that's what I use because it's really a whole lot better when you get deep into PowerShell. Doing anything with scripts or any kind of work, VS Code is the way to go. Not Visual Studio full blown, Visual Studio Code. It's lightweight, really nice little editor, and I'll show that in a second. All right, so properties, methods, actions. We've got zoom in here. I want to call that method, right? We talked about, we did one of our properties, I got start time. But what if I want to use one of those methods like that kill method? I can say kill, right? Well, I told you, anytime you see a method, it has parentheses after it. Well, it wants you to put those parentheses in too, but I'll show you this for a reason, because if you don't know what it is or what it can take, you can always do it without the parentheses, and it's going to tell you, hey, this is a method, please use parentheses. So it's going to kind of warn you about that. And some methods actually take a value, and it would show you here whether it takes a value or not. I'll explain that too. So now we can go back and put those parentheses on. I can say kill. Now if I do that same command, get process zoom, guess what's no longer there? Because I just killed my zoom process. Now I've got zoom at 64. Does that make sense? Question? Comment? Concern? Good stuff. All right. So get command, get help. Should be your 2 favorite commands. A variable is just a box. Don't think about it any deeper. Get member means you're getting the members of your object. So you can go find your properties and your methods and all that, right? These are core concepts in PowerShell. With these concepts, we can start now to put our PowerShell goodness together and start doing things. We can start working with our objects and finding out stuff that we want to deal with. Who in here manages a server? Favorite thing about a server tipping over is what? See processes going up, using memory, CPU, all kinds of crazy stuff, right? Well, get process, and I just say this, so I'll kind of stick with get process. It's an easy way for you to use this command and go get what it's using. Working set memory, page memory, non-pageable memory, all that stuff should be concepts that you get if you deal with servers, right? But again, those aren't all the data you want. Remember, always go grab your process, pass it over to a get member, and look and see what's there. So you can go get this other data that goes off of it. There'll be times, though, when you hit a method that you don't understand what this method or this action does. Let's pick one here, for instance, that takes something. All right, so wait for exit. Wait for exit is a method. It takes an int called milliseconds. So this is one of those methods that in the parentheses, it wants something. In this case, it wants an int. It wants a number, right? And usually they're pretty descriptive, whoever does it. That name that it's giving you is trying to be descriptive of what this int's supposed to do. So in this case, we're waiting for an exit for a certain amount of milliseconds. Well, I can guess at that method all day long. It's waiting for exit. Waiting for exit for what? The process I'm talking about? Another process? It's waiting for me to leave the building and go home? What exit? What's it talking about, right? Sometimes this is where PowerShell ends with its help, and you've got to learn to be a little smart and work a little deeper. And this is where understanding your object comes back into play and can really help you. So in this case, my type, or my object type, is a system.diagnostics.process. I can take that little piece of information, copy it out here, grab it, copy it out here, get out to my favorite search engine. You know what my favorite one is, right? Plug it in. The first hit I'm going to get is, guess what? A process. Now this is going to be some C# and C++ stuff, and don't let that freak you out at first because it's going to have the same information inside of it. When I click on process here, when I scroll down, I'm going to get the same stuff I was getting. Anytime you see this little box, sometimes it has a hand on it, sometimes it don't. But if it looks like a little Excel sheet, that tells me it's a property, it's data. It's stuff that I just kind of want to know about my process, right? How many arms does Theo have? How many handles does he have? Has he exited? So this is all data. But now, notice these are highlighted because they're link sensitive. And if I want to know more about, if say handle count gets the number of handles opened by a process, maybe that's not descriptive enough for me. I can come in here now and I can click on that. And it takes me over to the property page specifically about handle count. And maybe this little remarks here goes a little deeper than what that one little blurb said, right? So it's a way for me to learn a little bit more about what it's doing. It works the same way for your methods. Your methods you'll always see with a little purple box with like these little ellipses kind of illustrates it's moving, it does something, it's an action, right? So these, same way, it'll give me a little blurb. Let's go down to the one we were talking about. Wait for exit. Let's go see what it's waiting, what's exiting, what's it waiting for. So this one, we look for wait for exit, the one that took the int. We can see that it instructs the process to component to wait for a specified number of milliseconds for an associated process to exit. So in this case, it's not the process that I'm working with, it's another process, right? And again, if that's not enough information for me, I can click on that guy, and it's going to take me over, and now you'll see that you get a great big blurb down here that tells you a whole lot more information, more than you could ever want to know about the wait for process or wait for exit method. Helpful? Sometimes? A little deep? Fingers and keyboard. You got to go practice this stuff. You got to get your hands in there and play with it. And that's where we start to get a little deeper. So let's do this. It's half past. Let's take like a 5-10 minute break. Everybody get up, move around, get the restroom, get something to drink, and we'll come back and fundamentals of PowerShell, how to get into PowerShell. Now I'm going to skip boat on you here a little bit, dive into some deeper stuff so some of our other users can get some advanced, but you're going to gain some stuff out of this as well. And this, what I've shown you so far is how to get into PowerShell, how to use the commandments, how to put commandments together. And what we're going to dig into now is the automated part of that. How can I go make my own kind of stuff, right? I dig into this commandlet or I do something with an event log and I have to type out this log command. And then tomorrow when I come in and I need that command, guess what I'm doing again? I'm typing out that long command. So I'm going to teach you how to kind of automate this thing through what we call functions. A function in PowerShell is a way for me to take a named script block. Anytime you hear the word script block, a script block is nothing more than 2 curly braces. That's a script block. Typically when you see those curly braces, they're going to have something inside of them. Something like dash process. So you can see where this is going. It's really easy, right? If I make a function here, and I can do this right in my PowerShell command, it's not the place to do it, but I can do it in PowerShell. I can say function, and I can call this function, let's say get dash zoom it. I just made a function called get dash zoom it, and in here, I'm going to run inside my script block. I'm going to run a command, name, and zoom it. So now I have this function. I hit enter, nothing happens, right? Well, let me cover 2 things with PowerShell. If you enter a command, and it simply takes you back to your C prompt or your PowerShell prompt, that means it worked. If it doesn't yell at you and give you all kinds of red text, it means it worked. You might not get the desired output that you want out of it. Like we got nothing here, so what did it do? For me, that leaves some kind of desirable, but just know that if it goes to a prompt, whatever you did worked. Now, I just made a command named get-zoom-in. So if I type get-zoom-in in here, there's my command. So a function is a way for me to take and name my own commandlet. And when you name these, please, for the love of God, stick with the verb noun naming. I see people make functions all the time. It's like zoom in. No, getting zoom in. Call it get dash. If you're setting something, call it set dash. If you're removing something, call it remove dash. Stick with verb noun naming process. It will make everybody else around you not want to come and kill you when they look at your commandlets. Okay?
You're not going to ask for approved verbs?
That depends, and so Visual Studio Code does a lot of that things for me, and I usually try to stick to my approved verb, and I'll cover that in a second, because that's what we're going to open now, is Visual Studio Code, because this is how I work. I work in Visual Studio Code. And let's just open up a new, let's come in here in my temp, a new file, and we'll just call this one my utils. So I always put these, and you need to end it in whatever the extension is. In this case, I'm going to call it myutils.ps1. Anytime you deal with a PowerShell anything, it always ends in a PS1 for it to be able to know Visual Studio Code and know that it's PowerShell. All right. Let me just close all this other stuff here since it's irrelevant. So I get this window, and it has a window down here. This is a working live PowerShell window like we were just in. Okay? So I can come down here and I can run commands like get dash process, zoom it, and it runs PowerShell commands for me. Just because it's not blue doesn't mean it ain't PowerShell, right? It is PowerShell. Easy way to tell PowerShell runs the PS at the beginning. Okay? Real easy.
So
But in
the
this
function-
PS1 file, now I can come in here, go ahead.
So the function, what is the lifetime of that, life cycle of that function?
Good question. I should have covered that and I didn't. So let me reverse 1 second. Let's cover this real quick. So remember earlier, I made a variable called $num, right? It held a file. Right there it is, right? Here's the easiest way to remember what the lifetime of something in PowerShell is. What happens in Vegas, stays in Vegas. Same way with PowerShell. What happens in this PowerShell window, stays in this PowerShell window. That lifetime, guess what? $num? Nope. It no longer exists. It existed only in that blue window I had. So that's a good thing to call out. Sorry, I should have covered that. If you save something to your box in a PowerShell window, you must, if you want to keep it, before you close this window, we must get that out of PowerShell and save it somewhere else. Okay? So let's make $num. Let's set it equal to 5. Now if I say $num, guess what? I've got a box that has a number 5 in it, or an integer of the value of 5, right? How do Go ahead.
Why do you use a line terminator for numbers but not strings?
I do, I just, sometimes my finger forgets. I always use them in scripts.
And
You
they're
should
not-
always use
And
them.
they're not required.
They're not required, but you absolutely should use them. And what he's talking about is line terminator. The semicolon at the end says, think of it as punctuation. You've got a sentence. What do you put at the end of a sentence? Period. Because it tells you what?
At the end of the
Huh?
I'm done.
I'm done. Does the same thing here. It says I'm done. PowerShell doesn't require them unless get dash process, go get zoom it, get dash service. Hey, look at tab completed, right? Look at this, SE tab, secure boot. Now then fingered it up. So it's auto completing, right? Maybe I want to go get the net logon service. Or if I can type. But it's going to error out on me. So remember a minute ago, I'm going to diverge a little bit for a second again. Remember a minute ago I told you if it goes to another prompt cleanly, it means it worked, right? Guess what red text means? It means it didn't work. It failed. Why did it fail?
Well, because you didn't have end of line after your first one.
Does it tell me that?
No, it doesn't.
It kind of does. It kind of does. Kind of does. So you have to use your cryptomatic head, your cipher code to get through this red text. But in here, if I look at this red text, it says get dash process. A positional parameter cannot be found that accepts an argument for get dash service. It thinks, what's a parameter? Parameter is a superpower for a commandlet, right? It thinks that get dash service is a parameter for get dash process, but it's not. It's a whole nother command. Now I can make this work if I come back in here and not zoom in and use my period at the end of my sentence. Notice what happened immediately to get dash service. Watch the color change. Bam! It now knows that it is a commandlet. And PowerShell says, yay, that's a commandlet. And when I hit enter, guess what it does? It goes and gets my process, and it goes and gets my service, because I told it, your command ends here. This starts a new command. Punctuation is very important. If you're doing a single command, not required. Sometimes I get lazy when I'm in a straight PowerShell window. I am never lazy in a script or building a function. Let's change gears and go look at that. Good question, both of them. So, one more thing. Let's go back to this before I forget. $sign none, the whole reason we came here. Holds a 5, right? What if I want that 5? What if I need that? How do I get it out of PowerShell? There are many different ways. I want to implore you to go explore those different ways. I'm going to show you one. What I say earlier about when we ever work with a log file, what is that considered in PowerShell? Do I remember?
Data.
It's data, but it's also what? Content. Remember I said get dash content is your friend anytime you're trying to get data into PowerShell. Well, if get dash content gets data into PowerShell, do you think there's a content command to get data out of PowerShell? How do I find it? How do I find my content commands?
Yeah.
One, don't fail me now.
Dash command asterisk content asterisk.
Fantastic. So get dash command, start content, start. That's going to go find me all my content commands.
He might be a good PowerShell guy. Ryan.
So there's my get content. Well, and if I look at this list, which one do you think gets content out of PowerShell? There's actually 2 here. So you got to, set can get me content, and also add dash content. Both of those will get content. If you learn PowerShell verbs, you can almost look at these and know that what's the difference between add and set. Well, what's a set typically do?
Yeah, it might sound
Right? What's an add do? It adds to existing. So you can really start to take these verbs and understand what these commands are going to do. A set almost always overwrites. Now, we can go look at the get help file for this, and I'll save us some time. If you do a get help on set dash content, it actually has a dash append parameter that will let you append to it. Okay? The add dash content automatically appends by default. So if I want to add dash content, add dash content. If I went and looked at the help file, I know that it always wants a path and a value. So I'm going to give it a path of C10 data.log. Okay, and then what am I putting in? Add dash content, add it where? What am I putting into that? Well, I'm putting in a value, and I want to add $num. Did it work? Says it did. I don't know if it did or not. How do I figure that out? Let me go open it up, notepad that puppy. I could also do a type and put it right in here, and what I call it, my data, right? My data.log. Guess what it has in it? It has a 5. I just saved my data out of PowerShell, and now when I close this window, I have that data. Now it's that simple for your basic simplex types. There are other commands out there that will let you export data out of PowerShell. If you need to export data, go explore those. We don't have time to cover everything in here, but this is how you have to get that data out of there, because as soon as I close this window, bam, I just left Vegas. On the flight home, I'm like, you know what? I forgot my thing there. Let me go back to Vegas and let me go pick that thing up. $num, negative Batman, it's not there, it's gone. I've already left. So just keep that in mind. If you want your data, it's good for that session alone. That's how we manage it. All right?
I got a question. How do you save you can't save the variable?
Say again?
You can't save the variable though?
What do you mean?
Like reuse that variable in another session?
No.
No?
You have to save it out to somewhere. Now you can import it back in.
Okay.
There's import commands. Guess what one of them are?
Get add.
Get what? What I just used to get it out.
Get add.
Get dash content. So I can save it out to a data file. Now if I wanted that content, I just saved it, right? Guess what? Get dash content. Got to tell it where I'm getting content from. C:10 / my data.log, right? There's my 5. I just sucked that data back into PowerShell. If I want to put that in a variable, how do I put this in a variable?
$num equal.
$num equals. So now, when I come in here, silly Mac. There we go. $num equals, and now I'm putting this get content into my box, right? So now $num, once again, equals 5. Good stuff? This is a great way to be able to work with data. Now there's all kinds of stuff that we can do. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I have seen engineers, 65, but actually deleting information that should be deleted. Yes, that's why RSA says never delete something. Never delete something. You are
I don't know about that.
100% sure.
But know what you're deleting.
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly. And it happens before that engineer has deleted
Right.
information.
So did they mean to delete it? Was it accidental?
Accidental. How
So
can
check
you-
this out.
Yes.
I'm sure this is where you're going.
Yeah.
There's ways to manage accidental. Remember earlier I told you about my bacon savers. These 2 commands I'm about to tell you will save you from a resume building experience. Okay? I'm a PFE, Premier Field Developer. When I go out onto my customers, last year I traveled 43 weeks last year.
Whoa.
This year I haven't traveled in. I take years off. This is my year off. But when I go to my customers, at least once a year, I'll walk into a customer site. I'm like, hey, I'm here to work with little Timmy. We got a issue with servers down. They're like, yeah, little Timmy no longer works here. I'm like, great, who's my next guy, right? By the time I leave that engagement, I find out that little Timmy's deleted 10,000 servers, or 100,000 users, or 12 terabytes of data. Little Timmy doing something bad. Little Timmy found himself in a resume building experience. Not the way you want to do it. We go looking for a job, we want it to be on our terms, right? Not on their terms. So, let's say that I had my, let's see, what's a good example here? Let's say that I had a proc, $proc, and it had the process of get dash process, and we had zoom it in here. Okay? So now $proc, we all agreed that in my box, I have the process for zoom it, 64, right? Let's say I wanted to take zoom at 64 and I wanted to kill that process. I can do that. I can call these methods. I can play these games with my PowerShell commands. And actually, let me do this. Let me do a stop dash process, because this will actually give us a much better view. All right. If I hit this command right now, you all should now be fully aware of what this command will do, right? We talked about verbs and nouns and other tonight. We should know that stop process is going to stop my process. Anytime you see the word remove inside of PowerShell, immediately replace remove with delete, because that's what a remove does. PowerShell has these special functionalities, and I'm going to show you how to do these here in just a second, called common parameters. One of them is a confirm. I can say add dash confirm on there, and when I hit this, it's going to go, hey Theo, are you sure you really want to do this? Think this through. Ready to go find a job yet, right? And I can go, you know what? Nah. It gives me a second to bail out of what I'm doing. Or I can go, you know what? I really don't know what that command does. What's that command do? And I can replace that confirm with a what if. Okay? You zoom in on that so everybody can see. I want to make sure you clearly see this dash. What if? This is going to say what would happen if I was to run this command. When I hit enter here, it says, what if I would go stop this process on this target? So it's going to kind of give me a verbiage of what it would do. It's not actually going to run the command. If I look at my zoom in process, hit dash process, zoom in, it is still there and it is still running. If I understand my data right, I can look at this process and know what state it's in. So let's go back and look at that process. Let's pipe that over to a get dash member so we can see all its members. One of those has a dash somewhere here.
I just select all.
Somewhere there's a status. So I can call this process. Let's say I can put it in a variable. So $proc equals get dash process zoom in 64. Now I can say $proc dot status. Oh, maybe it doesn't have a status. Oh, let's go see what it has real quick. One of these gives us what we're after here. I thought process had a status, but anyway, you can see where I can start diving into this. And anyway, before you run the command, if I throw that what if on there or that confirm on there, it's going to say, hey, here's what I would do. So just remember, go back to that, let me clear this. Just remember that guy, that dash what if. Because that dash what if will let you run that command and it'll say, here's what I was going to do, but it won't really do it. And it would save that person from removing that data unintentionally. Gives them a little bit more information. Now, some of these are really good, some of them are not so much.
Microsoft have any plans to make PowerShell artificial intelligent and self-learning? Because I assume this is all rote, we should.
So it depends on where you play with it. Everything's artificial intelligence and learning if you put it inside a machine or AI today. I can take anything I want to inside of PowerShell and add a cognitive service to it and get that functionality. But in itself, I don't see that happening. It's a fundamental foundation language, and I expect it to stay that way.
Well, it's going to fall by the wayside.
I don't think so, because you can throw it into a cognitive service and utilize them together. Everything today doesn't need AI built into it, but it needs to be able to use AI or machine learning with it. And today with cognitive services and other things, we can throw whatever we want to at that cognitive service or AI and get AI built onto whatever we're doing. PowerShell no different. I can build a bot today that gives me a whole list of PowerShell commands, and I can say, good morning, PowerShell bot. Go find me a command for get content, and it'll go find me all my get content commands, or I can even talk to it how to run it. But that architecture and technology is an addition to. I would never see that changing for any language. I write in 7 different languages now. I don't see it doing that for any of them. C#, Python, Java, Node.js, none of them. They're a language and they're a standard. But they can all be used with AI or cognitive services. An answer?
Just out of curiosity, so you kind of write in 7 languages. What do you lean towards most now? Is it Python?
C#.
C# stuff?
When I'm not in PowerShell, I'm a C# guy. It's just a framework. It's just so much more robust. I used to be a Java guy, and once I learned C#, I hate Java now. just because of all the nuances and things that it doesn't restrict you to. C# is very type specific. It's a strongly typed language, and the framework that's out there is just so large. And it's growing. The reason C# isn't, I think, today the #1 language out there is because for so many years our favorite last CEO decided everything needed to be held tightly and close and not let out. But now we're open source. Since we went open source with C#, it's doubled in its rankings via Pluralsight and through Stack Overflow. So,
Do you have any JSON friends?
say again.
Do you have any JSON friends?
Everybody should be doing JSON today. If you're doing anything in the cloud and you're not using HTML or JSON, you're doing it wrong. So yeah.
And PowerShell native supports JSON.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got commandlets like import JSON, convert to JSON. There's all kinds of, if you want to know what's out there for JSON, just to give you an idea, let's run that again. Let's clear our screen. Let's do a get dash command, star, JSON, star. Bam, there's your convert to JSON or convert from JSON. So you can pass a JSON template in or out of PowerShell. You can take any object in PowerShell and convert it right out, convert it to JSON and pass it to a variable or add dash content or whatever to get it out of PowerShell. Yeah, JSON, using the Newtonsoft library is built right into PowerShell today. Cool stuff?
Yes.
All right, let's get back to our function before we run out of time here. So, all right, so we've got this thing and we want to build a function that's reusable. We've learned some PowerShell commandlets. Now let's say that every day we come in and we run like 4 PowerShell commandlets to do something, right? We want to be able to do that with one keystroke. We don't want to have to type out these 4 super long commandlets and pass them to each other. So how do we do that? Well, let's say that our job is to come in and let's say that we're getting an event log. Let's go get an event log. Let's go our log name. Let's look at system, and let's say that I want to pipe this over. So remember, my pipe takes everything that I've done on the left and is going to hand it to whatever I do on the right. PowerShell is an expressionist language. What I mean by that, we can use some syntax called like where and for each and things like that to be able to functionally handle our data. So I'm going to say, go get me all my event logs in the system. And then I'm going to say, but I only want to see ones where the name, or actually, it's an event log, so where the event ID is equal to, remember I told you if you wrote in a different language, this will drive you crazy, because we don't use the dash, or the equals here, we're going to use this more human readable construct of a dash equals. There's all kinds of operators in PowerShell for comparisons. Dash EQ is equals, dash LT is less than, dash GT is greater than, they're really simple. I'm going to show you one more help thing that will help you find those. But for right now, I want to say where it's equal to a 6006. Now, I just happen to know that a 6006 tells me when my machine was last rebooted. That gave me a ton of data, right? Well, I don't want to sort through all that data. I want to take that same command and I want to see only the first one. Because the first one was the last time my machine was rebooted. I don't want to see all of these that gave me when it was rebooted back on March the 14th at 7 o'clock in the evening. I want to know the very last time it was rebooted. So pipes, where I told you earlier, feels like yesterday, where what's on the left gets passed into what's on the right. Well, pipelines can be chained. So now I can say where event ID equals 6006, and I got all those. Now I can hand that to another pipeline and filter even more. There's a proverb to remember with this. Process on the left, filter on the right. So we have to get what we're working with on the left, we're getting our event logs, we're filtering on the right. And then there's a third part of that, which is format at the end. So process on the left, filter on the right, format on the end. I'll go into that a little deeper here. So I'm going to do, and Visual Studio Code is really awesome, by the way, because I can come in here and I can use my control plus and minus, and I can zoom in as well to make this much more readable for you guys in the back. Now you can see this, right? So now in that same command, let me just get back out so I can see what I'm doing. In that same command, I can pipe that over. I can pipe that over, and I can say, okay, I've got all my event logs. Then I'll filter those for the 6006. Now I just want to see the first one. So I can use a select dash object, and I only want to see the first one. And when I do this, Now I get my very first one. So on July 12th, that was the last time that my machine was rebooted. Really easy to see. But I don't want to type all this every day. I want a commandlet that will do this for me. And this is where functions come into play. So now I can come up here and use that name script block I told you about. So I can say function. And if you type it wrong, it will yell at you and show you the way to type it right. And Visual Studio Code gives you lots of IntelliSense. And it's going to say, hey, Theo, you want a function advanced, or a function inline? Well, I just want a function. And it even gives me a little description out here to the side of what each one of these are. So if I come down here and click on it, oops, Control-Z. If I come out here and arrow down to it, as I arrow over those, it will change that description and let me see what each one of those does. So this is another way for you not to have to type a lot. The way that I mean by that is I can type FUNC and it automatically comes up, right? So with the one that's highlighted, I can just hit Enter, I can hit Tab, and it will automatically build it for me. Now, it just did a bunch of extra stuff for me. I didn't type all that. Visual Studio Code typed it for me. Go ahead.
Okay, so I saw something really weird. Okay, so every day you come into work, you open up Outlook to check your email. You open up, let's say you use Microsoft Edge, that's going to be your preferred browser. So you open it up also, and what is it for those things? So what,
Exactly.
can you do something to where when you first come in, you like do your couple keystrokes, and it automatically opens up Outlook and Edge for you?
Want to work with processes. Outlook's a process, right?
Okay.
It's an application, it's a process. So using my PowerShell knowledge, I'm going to go, okay, what can I do with processes? Well, I can start processes. Well, I want to start my PowerShell, so I can give it the file path, and now I can go find that path, which is like C, program files. Actually, I don't have Outlook installed on this machine. Let's just go find something basic here. Say again? Notepad. Exactly. Good example. All right, so Notepad lives in the Windows System 32 directory. So Windows / System 32 / there we go. There's Notepad. So now we have to give our function a name. And I'm going to call it start my processes. So you always want to name your function something that's grammatical and meaningful to you, right? Because this is your function. This is something that you're going to automate and have done every day. So my first line in here is start -notepad. Well, if I was doing this in a PowerShell window, I'd have to type that out. And let's say I wanted to start, let's go find, actually, let's just start the command prompt. So start -process -file path C /Windows /System 32s. System 32 /command
CMD.
Yeah, there we go. So CMD, and let's say I also want my event logs. So let's do that. Let's say I want to look at the last time my machine was rebooted, so I want to be able to see that. Now, typically, when you build a process or build a function, you want it to be very atomic. What I mean by that is you want it to do one thing and do that one thing very well. I'm breaking that rule here. But let's say this is my morning routine. These are the things I do immediately when I come in the morning. And let's say on top of that, I want to open my log file that has a variable in it. And let's just go grab some log file in my temp directory, something.
Why don't you type out the event log?
My data doesn't read. Say again?
You could pipe out the previous command.
Yeah, I could. Let's just stick with our basic here. So I've got this basic command here, and I'm just going to save this. Save this. So now I've got a function here, and when I run this function, I can say start -my process. Gotta play it in. So when you build a function in a script file, there's a secondary thing that we have to be able to do to get those functions available to our session. And it's called, there's .source notation, and then there's .sourcing. This is dot sourcing. And this is a way for me to make sure my functions are available in there. So all I need to do is put a dot. Notice I hit a space. The space is very important. So a dot, space, and then the path to my file here, which is C10 / my utils. There we go. So now my function is available to me. So start - my processes. And now all those things just open for me. There's my notepad. There's my command prompt. There's my other copy of empty notepad. What else did I do? I went and got my event log. So down here, there's my event log showing me when my machine was last rebooted. So now that function just did everything that you wanted.
So how would you save that to where you could, when you first come in, just say, for example, you have 2 keys and...
So inside of PowerShell, there's a notion called a profile. Okay? Now I'm going to caution you very cautiously, what you put in a profile. A profile is nothing more than a PS1. It is a script. And if you put a script in here, if that script takes 2 hours to run, guess what happens every time you open up PowerShell? It runs that script, and you're waiting on your window for 2 hours. Okay? Do not put scripts inside of your profile. The difference between a script and a function declaration file, this is a function declaration file. If I run this, nothing happens. It only makes my function available inside of PowerShell. Only when I call an actual command outside of these 2 curly braces does this become a script. So if I come in here and I come down here and I say start - my process, now this just became a script file because when I run this .ps1, it's going to run that function that I defined above it. Does that make sense? Anybody not understand that? Okay. So inside of a function declaration file, you should only declare the function, build the body, give it the name, give it what it does inside. Now to make those available, every time you open up PowerShell, inside of PowerShell there's a notion of a profile. $profile is a built-in variable inside of PowerShell that tells you where your profile is stored. Okay? Notice it's pointing to this Microsoft.PowerShell_profile.ps1. It's just a script file. So inside that script file, let's go see if mine exists. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this the old school way, using an Explorer, because I want you to get the visual. In here, if I look at that path, it's telling me in TH Brown and Documents and Windows PowerShell, so this directory, you should have a Microsoft.PowerShell.profile, but I don't, right? So what that $profile variable tells me is that's where it's going to go look at for the profile. If it exists, I can use it. If it doesn't, it'll do nothing. I can make it really quickly by coming in here and saying new file and telling it add a new file, but I'm a PowerShell guy. I don't like to do things like that. It's clicky clicky. Who wants to clicky clicky? I came to learn to type, right? So PowerShell has commandlets to create new items. Guess what? How I create a new item in PowerShell? The one you can do it. New -item. It's really that simple. So new -item. And since I already have the item that I want, I can say, hey, what are you creating? So for type, I'm going to tell it I'm creating a file. And then where am I going to create that file? So I have to tell it a path. Are you starting to see kind of a pattern here? When you're looking for something, it wants to know where you're at. So a path or a value or something like that, right? And now where am I going to tell it to go look for that path? I'm going to type that whole thing out in here, right? Oh, that's hard. I don't like hard. I've already got a variable that has that string in it called $profile. So I'm just going to pass it to it. Now by default, it automatically creates it. Now if I go back and look in that directory, guess what's there? There's a file. There's my PowerShell profile. Now it's just a script file. It has nothing in it. If I want it to have stuff in it, I've got to go in here and open it up. Now let's just say edit. It's going to open it up in ISE, I think is the default on this machine right now. Maybe. Oh, yep, there it is. So you'll notice that it's empty. There's nothing in that script file. So if I wanted to do this, and what profile does is profile says every time PowerShell starts up, do these things. Well, let's say I like my string clean. So I'm going to go CD /, we'll see you, sir. I'm going to go CD backslash to clear my screen, change directory, it's a shortcut. Maybe I want to clear my screen, so CLS, or I'll use the PowerShell command, clear dash host. And let's say that I need an inspirational message because I'm kind of a downer kind of guy. I need somebody to, I need inspiration. I need somebody to tell me, hey Theo, have a great day, right? So I have this thing in here to tell me to have a great day. And then I want access to my functions that I've built. So I'm going to use that dot space, C:\\temp / my utils, and call out my utils. Now when I hit save on that, when I open up PowerShell now, guess what happens? Yay! I got told to have a great day. My prompt's all the way down to a C prompt that's no longer C, TH Brown, documents, whatever. I'm getting more real estate, right? And guess what's available to me? Start dash my processes. And bam, there's my processes. Life's getting automated. This makes stuff easy. Can you see the potential here? You can come in the morning and what took you 5 or 6 minutes turned into 12 seconds-ish to bam bam, and you've got your stuff opened, right? Or longer, depending on what it is. So you gain 5 minutes back in the morning. Start adding on to that. Start finding these processes and these things, and go build functions to do things that you want them to do. Now there's tons of other stuff that we absolutely just don't have time to get in here. There's so much more functionality that we can do with a function. These get really deep. And if we had 2 more days to go through this, I would love to spend time with you and do that, but we don't. I know everybody wants to go home. It's getting late, so take this stuff, fingers in keyboard. Don't be scared to try stuff. Dash what if, dash confirm. Go build stuff. Go play with stuff. If you can't figure it out, you got LinkedIn? Who has LinkedIn? Everybody should have their hand up in an IT community. Reach out to Theo Browning. I am always open to conversation. You will never get a no from me. You'll get a not today. Let's talk tomorrow. I'm in Los Angeles or whatever, but don't ever hesitate to reach out to me directly and say, Theo, I've got the script that isn't working, or I get this error, what's this mean? I'll gladly help if I can. If it's something too deep, I might turn you away and say, hey, do you have a TAM or somebody we can work with? This is going to take hours, right? But if I can answer it in 10 or 15 minutes, I absolutely am open to do that. Yeah. You can also get me at Codehead Theo on Twitter, at Codehead Theo on Twitter. Good stuff?
Yes.
All right. I'll be around for at least another half an hour for anybody. As long as you're asking questions, I'll hang out and ask questions. So I know I've seen a couple of hands up. Fire.
That script.
Oh, great question. We're getting deep. So the question he asked was, how do I debug my command line? What if I want to see something that's going on, or I want to know what a variable is doing? Now, this gets a little deeper, but let's do this. Let's leave our starts, and actually let's take these out. And let's say that I want to get that out. So I'm just going to go basic function here. All this function does is gets my event log. So let's change the name of it, right? Get Theo's last shutdown. So this keeps it kind of on spot for what I'm doing. So get event log. Get Theo last shutdown. All right. Well, let's say in here I create a variable called $num. And I set it equal to 5. Well, let's say down here I'm doing something with $num. Let's just fictitiously say that it's actually a process name, and I hand it to the ID and say $num. PowerShell Visual Studio Code, PowerShell extension, has a way to do what we call debugging. Debugging, we go back to the old school term of debugging. Debugging literally means to debug something. Back in the early 60s, late 60s, there was a big, I don't know if anybody's ever seen the, what's the NASA movie? Huh?
The computer was an ENIAC.
Yeah, it was an ENIAC. It was one of the ones that were put in NASA. They were trying to work with it. They were having problems with it. It was throwing sparks and yelling and kicking people and all kinds of stuff. And so back then, these computers were big as a room, right? They literally had to walk inside of them and work on cards and all kinds of other stuff. Well, they found a moth shorting out a capacitor inside of that computer. Thus, the verb debugging was born. Somewhere at some museum, that moth is still under a piece of glass somewhere. Anyway, history. But debugging today is the art of examining your code, pausing your code, and working through to understand what your code is doing, your script is doing. Well, Visual Studio Code gives us a way to do that. Really, really simple. We just simply come in here and we click beside of it, and I put a little red dot. When I put that little red dot beside of it, that tells PowerShell, run my code to here, but do not run the command that the dot is on. So when I run this function, it's not actually going to create $num, and I think I have the $num in here, let me just check that. No, I don't, so this is perfect. So now when I come up here and go debug, and I say start debugging, maybe, don't lock me now, Visual Studio Code. Neat. So sometimes it will give you a little headache. Let's just set another one here. It is not all. So this is a function. Theo's tired. I've been up since 6 o'clock this morning. Remember, I told you if I call my script file that this does nothing. This is a function declaration, right? So my output when I called my script was doing exactly what it was supposed to do. It's not a malfunction on VS Code. It's a malfunction in Theo's head. So for me to actually start debugging this, I need to call my function now. So what's it called now? Get Theo. There's Theo's last shutdown. Hit enter. Now you'll notice that it highlighted that line with the yellow. In Visual Studio Code or ISC, whichever one that you want to use, ISC is built into Windows, so sometimes we use it. I highly implore you to use Visual Studio Code as replacing ISC. But it highlights that line that I put the red dot on in yellow. That yellow means this is the line of code I'm about to run. I haven't ran it yet, but I'm about to run it. And you can really see that because I can come down here and go, does $num exist? No, it doesn't. It has no value. But if I come up here and use my different commands, and I'm going to teach you to use F11 or step into. So step into is your most common one. If you want to learn debugging, there's great courses out on Channel 9 about debugging PowerShell that walks through Visual Studio Code. But for now, just remember F11 is your friend or step into. That means run that line of code and stop at the next. So when I hit that, notice my yellow line advances to the next line. And how do I know that that worked? Well, I can come back down here again, and I can do $num. Now num is 5. So now it actually exists. It created that variable, and it stored the number 5 inside of $num. Okay? So this will let you walk through your code line by line. And the cool part about it is you get several different things. In Visual Studio Code, you get a variables window over here. Well, look at that. It's telling me what $num is. That's really great stuff. The other thing that I can do is I can put my mouse over $num anywhere that it exists. And see what happened there? It popped up this little pop-up box because my mouse is over $num and it says, hey, num has a 5 in it. It would show me any object that's in my box. So debugging, that's how you debug in Visual Studio Code. It gets way deeper than that. That is a good place to start. When a script is not doing what you expect it to do, or maybe that $num when you pass it to start dash process, it's a 10. And you're like, I just set it to 5. This is a way to go through that code line by line and go, okay, where did num get changed to a 10? What's happening here, right? So you can walk through your script. This is a very simple script. The scripts can be 1,000. I've got one that's 10,800 lines of code. They can be very large. Okay, so they get big.
Is there any relationship, symbology, or information to extract? You know, you have start process, it's capital S, capital P. You got num, which is small case, and then you had profile with all caps.
What I say about PowerShell and case sensitivity earlier.
Well, that was one of the first things you said.
Doesn't care. So if I come in here, and do this, so by default.
But there's not a consistency with PowerShell if it doesn't care.
Sure it is. The consistency is it doesn't care. It's consistently non-caring. It doesn't care. $num uppercase gets you the same thing as $num lowercase. If I say
so when it self-populates, it's populating in different formats.
if you hit tab, it does camel case, which makes the first letter in the first of each word uppercase. So it does that by default. And it's doing that because through history, all of our programming languages, we use this thing called camel case. So it tries to keep to that. But if I say, if I come in here and say get dash process and hit tab and tell it to go get zoom in, then it goes and does it. If I do that same thing, get dash, and I type it out myself, get dash process, go get zoom in, 64, and hit enter, I get the same thing. PowerShell does not care about case by default. There are ways to make it care about case. You can turn case sensitivity on per command, but I would, there's no need to. Case insensitivity makes it more human usable than remembering cases. I can't tell you in C# and Java and Node.js world where I go out to a customer and their code is just like jacked up, it's causing problems, they're getting exceptions, and I go through the code and I'm like, oh yeah, well, when you do a whatever .info, the I in info is uppercase. And they're like, are you kidding me? And I'm like, no, check this out. Fix it, run. Hey, look, it works. Casing inside of code, bad concept from the beginning. We did it to stop ambiguity, right? Because it allows you to have a start-info that has an uppercase and another start-info that's all lowercase, so you can have multiples of the same thing. But PowerShell totally went against that, and it's a good thing. In my opinion.
I remember you saying that it was not case sensitive, but I was just thinking that if it populates all caps, it must be,
No,
there must be something that
There
it's
are
trying to
best
tell you.
there are best practices.
I can do $ profile or lowercase just as well, and it doesn't care. There are best practices, and opinions are like, you know what, everybody has one. And my opinion is that this is the way to go. This makes it much easier for everybody else, makes it consistently work, no matter whether you remember to capitalize your P or you didn't remember to capitalize your P. It's always going to work for you.
What goes around comes around, Watson builds up a room.
Yeah? What's their market share? I shouldn't have went there. Just saying. It's a good thing. You're right. No, again, that's another one that it's an opinion kind of thing. Which one do you think works better? There's hard data to show both ways, right? So it really depends on what you're doing.
I kind of look forward to Watson doing growing. I mean, it's a, you know, people realize what it can do, and they're starting to apply what it can do, and it's just a matter of time. And the more and more data we got, the Watsons of the world are going to be, you know, very powerful. So,
If you like Watson, you should really look at Azure Data Lake Analytics and AI inside of Azure. It's really powerful stuff. And the framework and the structure and the data pools are already there. They're not waiting on people to come use it. They've got users.
is Oracle dead meat?
That's our answer to Watson.
Is Oracle dead meat?
No, actually we have a ton of offerings on Oracle on Azure. We give full compute VMs that run Oracle databases. We run Red Hat VMs up under the covers for that. Full management, full compatibility with Oracle support behind it. So not just our support for the VM it's running on, but Oracle pledges support to support your Oracle instance, and you can do rack and all that inside of Azure, which you can't do in any other cloud today. I'm an Azure guy. That's what I do by trade is develop.
Well, I think Azure's going to beat pants off Oracle in time.
I don't think so. I think it'll be a partnership. Like I just said,
Well, that'd be cool.
we've got many offerings for people to run Oracle databases. The fact of the matter is Oracle is a strong database that's out there. We've got lots of people running them. So bringing them into Azure will just continue to help build that support. I think it'll be more of a partnership, not a competition. But again, my opinion.
Who's better at this time, AWS or Microsoft?
Depends on what you're talking about. There's comparisons for everything. Who's better at databases? I think we are. Who's better at compute prices? I think they are. But if you spend more time computing your database that's inefficient, then what's the wash? Azure beats it. So it really depends on how you compare. It's not an apple-to-apple comparison on those kind of features, but some of them aren't. It just depends on what you're talking about. Everybody's got their strong points and their weak points, right? Mario Andretti can take a heck of a curve, and he can beat out Lorenzo Wallace any day, but get him on a straight stretch, gone, man. Everybody's got their plus and minuses. Question?
Yes. My own theory of automation is I don't even want to press the keys. So
You just want to think.
It hasn't worked for me yet. I've tried many times.
all right, but just like, can you use like task scheduler, or is there another scheduler?
Yes. Task scheduler is a great way to automate. Run books, group policies. There's so many ways to make things magically happen without you pressing a button. You know.
Is there anything, you just run PowerShell scripts directly from task scheduler?
Yeah, so task scheduler lets you point to a file to run, right? So you can say task scheduler at 8 o'clock in the morning, go run this, and you can call it PowerShell.exe space. So the way you call a PowerShell script, and you can call PowerShell from everywhere. I can open up my command prompts that I've got open here, and I can say PowerShell.exe, and that will run PowerShell for me. Notice what I got at the top of my command prompt now. Hey, have a great day. I'm in PowerShell. So now I can do git dash, oops, not whoop dash, but git dash process, right? And I'm able to run those. There's my PowerShell commands now working in my command window. But if I wanted to get out of this, I simply say exit. That puts me back to my command prompt. So now I'm, git dash process will no longer work. But if I wanted to run a script from here, I would just say PowerShell.exe and path to my script. In this case, my data, my utils, and if that actually had something that ran in it, not just a function declaration, that would run that PowerShell script. So easy way to be able to do that right from a command line. You can do that from a task scheduler, runbooks in Azure, Garrows from AWS, just about anywhere you can call it PowerShell scripts.
So can you write an email from that? So,
absolutely.
So you check in the morning automatically, start Outlook, write a couple of fake emails to your boss throughout the day.
Send
Boo, Outlook.
Whatever.
Check it out. Send dash mail message. Send dash mail message will let you add a parameter called dash body. You can kind of guess what that is. There's your body, dash subject, dash recipient. All that, you can send mail messages right in here, and it will use your SMTP provider that's built into your box. So it's pretty cool stuff.
Put some
You can
random
throw all that
stuff. You
to
can take a whole
template.
week off from work and nobody will know you're gone.
Right? Write another script that reads your email, or at least marks them read. You've even covered that. So. Good.
Yeah, so when I kind of reviewed some of this stuff as far as like, instead of using equivalent, equal sign, you're using dash and Q, and then you got obviously the pipe or grep. What are the shortcuts? Is there kind of like a place to go to get like maybe even run through like this free lab type environment?
So, yeah and no.
Okay.
The best learning I can give you from here, who's a Premier customer? Anybody Premier customer has a TAM? One. Okay, so I won't throw that out there. We have a workshop that we put you through, 4 days that I call it my PowerShell. Yeah, it's really for IT administrators. It's a great class. It's a 4-day class. Even as a non-Premier customer, you can still go sign up and pay for the class and take it. It's a 4-day class. I call it my 0 to hero class because it takes you from not knowing anything about PowerShell to knowing all kinds of stuff about PowerShell. We've got labs that make you put fingers in keyboards, so it's really great. But if you don't have that, my secondary favorite site, you might have seen this up here earlier, and I promote them. I am actually a PowerShell mentor on Pluralsight. So if you're not familiar with Pluralsight, Pluralsight is a fantastic learning site to go to. And if you just go to Pluralsight and type in, I want to learn PowerShell, if you type it correctly, I want to learn PowerShell. The first one you're going to get up here is Windows PowerShell Essentials. This is an 18-hour content course, which equates to about 60 hours of your actual time spent working with it. 18 hours of an instructor talking at you, and then another 40 hours of you and fingers and keyboard trying to do stuff and learning. This is where you want to go if you don't want to pay for the Microsoft course. Go get your Pluralsight. Pluralsight, some people say it's expensive. It's $300 a year or like $30 a month or something like that. It's worth every single penny. If you really want to advance your IT career, you can find anything you want to up here, whether it's getting an Azure certification or learning PowerShell, learning Java, learning Node.js, how to administrate an Oracle server, whatever you want to learn, they've got quality content up here.
We used to have coupons for Pluralsight sale.
Say again?
I keep getting emails from them like $15, $10.
Yeah, there's you get a bunch of coupons.
Go sign up your name, and I'm sure you'll get coupons or introductories. Go use it for a month, go through the course, and disconnect it. But I will disconnect it. It's worth every penny.
Can you fast forward the lesson if you want to on that?
Say again?
Can you fast forward the lessons on Pluralsight?
Absolutely. So when you go into Pluralsight, let me just open it up on my machine.
You ever hear some of these guys
So
talk?
log in over here.
It's like watching paint dry. So if you don't fast forward, you fall asleep.
No, so what I like about it is you don't really need to fast forward it. There's several ways to do it. I know this is kind of diverging off of Pluralsight.
Maybe it wasn't
Log in
Pluralsight.
here. Bear with me 1 second while I get logged in. All right, so here we go. So this is Pluralsight. Let's say that I'm working with Bot Framework. That's just one of the classes that I'm working on personally right now. So it's got a whole list of all your content over here on the right. You can just skip courses. But one of the things I like is down here at the bottom, it's got a, hey, I don't like your speed, talk faster. So you can turn it up to like 2 times as fast, or depends on who you're talking about. You got some country bumpkin down there like me, and I talk a little slow and kind of tend. You need me to talk faster. You get some dude from New York on there, and you need to slow it down a little bit, right? So you get those options in there. It's really great to be able to do that. And again, if you know everything there is to know about this topic, you can skip right to the next topic. You don't have to watch one, and it still counts as credit stuff. So it's really great to be able to do that. Like I said, I highly recommend Pluralsight. It's just a great learning tool.
If you've got kids, that 30-second read one's an absolute necessity.
Yeah. There's no time limit on it, right? Once you start a course, it takes you, it might be 18 hours. You can take, a year to learn it if you want. Content's probably going to get a little old by then, but I'd expect a faster pace. But however long you want to take to do it today. It's up to you. Anything else?
Do you also do Azure?